We did it again. All right, folks. It's the Live Reality Games Maryland Recap Podcast. You know that you're here. You're watching. I'm Naomi. I'm here with my co-host, Steven. Steven, what's going on?
Life is good. I am thrilled because we are talking to what will be the most iconic player of Survivor Maryland Major Conflict, Doug. Doug, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. Getting to watch it back and everything. It's nice to be able to talk about it now. So.
Yes, I would argue, and I don't know if I'm not saying this is good or bad, probably the most notorious 2020 Survivor player in college, for sure. And honestly, maybe in just Survivor overall. But that's, I think, a decision the fans will make at some point.
Yeah, we'll see.
So we're going to talk about literally everything, not just the finale, not just the merge. We're going to talk about anything Doug wants to talk about, anything any commenter wants to talk about, and it's going to be super fun. And mostly what we want to talk about, because it's our podcast and not yours. So starting off, Doug, we know that you and Santi were sort of involved in getting involved in Maryland, but what brought you to actually apply for Survivor Maryland?
So I'm a huge fan of Survivor. I watched it my whole life, like never miss an episode, just like probably a lot of people that play these games and get like super into it. I saw it was a thing at Maryland, and then Tim's friend Dylan, actually, Tim was friends with him like from home, and Dylan had just played season 6 and was just raving about it and saying how great it was. And I like hadn't really heard about it until that point, honestly. And then I was like, all right. And then so me and Tim were talking about it, and then we're like, all right, let's just apply. So I obviously knew I wanted to play after just hearing that it was fun and a thing at Maryland, because I was like, this is super unique and something that I've always wanted to get myself into because I've been such a fan.
The streak of people being friends with former players and that not helping at all continues.
Correct.
Congrats to Tim.
And so Survivor Maryland wasn't the reason why you applied to the University of Maryland to go there for college, right?
No, it was not.
Okay.
All right, fine. And when you thought about actually playing Survivor in a college setting versus what you knew as a fan of, like, this is what Survivor is to me, was it jarring to jump into things, or did you actually find that you were much more accustomed to everything than anybody else who maybe wasn't a fan?
I think I definitely had a leg up just from the get-go, like just by like subtle eye contact from the first day. I just was able to like make like little connections with people, as opposed to just being like, oh my gosh, we're running a race, we're doing a challenge, what? I was more just like making those quick connections that made people want to trust me like sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
Did you talk to Tim and Santi very much before the season began? Because you knew all three of you had applied and got on with each other.
Right. We didn't, because it was very strict, like do not talk to anyone playing. But obviously we're all like very close to the point. I mean, knew we all applied, or it was like, okay, like see you at McKeldin tomorrow, like things like that. So I knew Tim was gonna be where I was meeting, and we knew Santi was going to be somewhere else, because we were like, what? Because me and Santi we were like, okay, like this is me already playing the game before the game starts. I'm like, Santi, we can't walk in at the same time. We have to go at different times, take different routes. And I find out that Santi's meeting at a whole other place on campus. And I'm like, oh, okay, scratch that plan.
The plan worked. It's fine. Everything worked out.
Yeah, I was gonna say it worked.
Knowing that Santi and you were roommates, was that like, were you worried at all? Like, how, like you were already talking about the appearance of, okay, we need to play down the fact we're roommates, but like, what were your thoughts on that going into the season?
Going in, I was really stressed, because it just is, to me, it's an added target. Then I was like, oh my gosh, and he's also like pretty likable, someone that people could see as a threat. So I thought that was like, if you have 20 random people, who are you going to target first? That's an easy thing to look at. So it definitely made me nervous. I think one thing too in the season, it like was very close, because I was like complaining so much about it. So we had 6 people meeting in our common room. This was after like the first challenge, I think. Like it's like day 1. Santi walks in and is like, hey, what's up? How are you doing? This is after they won. He's like, hey, Tim, like rubs Tim's head. And I was like, I like yelled at him for a while after. I was like, Santi, you cannot give away that we're all friends, that we live together. This is too early. Like we learned pretty quickly how to manage that after that experience.
You can't show 1 ounce of liking Tim. We have to be anti-Tim in this situation. That is, and I can only imagine, like, I feel like part of it was that you were sort of, I don't like, it's like you're the sort of like panicked like person in the group who's like, we cannot be seen doing this together, and everyone else is just like, no, I'll drink like 5 beers. What's going on? Like,
Right.
You had all of the paranoia for everybody.
Right, exactly.
Steven, what else are you thinking of?
So, what were your first impressions of your other tribe mates when you get there? You already know Tim. What's going through your head as you see and get to meet the other people there?
So I was like very, not insecure, but like very in my head about how to present myself, because I wanted to present myself as super trustworthy. I think I was like trying to, when I would meet everyone, I was like pick something to like bond with them immediately. So it'd be like, at this point I was chemical engineering. So it was Amanda, and then like Chris was also a sophomore. Teresa, I was like, hey, nice to meet you, like everyone. Who else? Natalia. It was just like find something to bond with them. I thought that I really liked everyone's vibe immediately, and that everyone seemed really nice. So then that was kind of, I just went from there. There was no one that necessarily stood out, except when me, Sadie, Delaram kind of were like hanging back and walking. That's when I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to them first.
Mm-hmm. And so you are now like Dr. Doug. Did you at any point think, I guess it's a tribe of like STEM, so you all assume that you're sort of more scientific, more smart, let's say, in like a logical sense. Did you at any point ever worry that somebody was going to like pick on you for being an engineer, or say that, oh, the engineers are really smart, we have to go after them? Did you try and maybe hide how sort of STEM oriented you were?
I don't think so, because I don't think I give that off necessarily. Like, I think I'm a more social person in general. So I wasn't worried that they were going to be like, oh, this person's smart because of that. Because I know that they would meet me and get to know me on like because I am like a really, not in a cocky way, but like I'm a very nice person in general. It's like, their first thing isn't like, oh, he's super like, whereas someone like Eric definitely came off very calculated immediately. Like he didn't come off initially as the most warm person in the group. Like he came off very like ABC, like calculated. And I think that definitely it did show at first. And that's why like some people are just like wanted to work with other people more.
Yeah, I feel like there could be a whole like scientific study on just like the group of people in Survivor meeting for the first time, a tribe like meeting, because you see it in real Survivor too, right? That somebody is immediately like super smart. I just rewatched like the intro to Kageon, and like Jatia saying, oh, I have the plan for the shelter. I am not going to help with the shelter, but I have the plan. Don't worry, guys. Steven?
So you immediately like build 2 different alliances, right? You get off to a great start, and it turns out to be very necessary because you're pre-swap. You go to tribal council 3 different times, and you have a crazy run where you and Eric just kind of end up sort of battling each other, sort of not.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to kind of talk through maybe your relationship with Eric and how that evolved?
Yeah, so me and Eric, I thought we were like pretty good, honestly. Like we were like, but I knew from my end, just he was like the one person that didn't fit into all my alliances, if that makes sense. And so there was no bad blood, I guess. So it was like fine, until is when Sadie like said that he mentioned getting me out, and she was like, he said to get you out because you were just like boring or something. And I was like, me? No, that's unacceptable. So that kind of led to this like rivalry that we had. Even though at the end of the day it was because for game reasons or both of us, but it was things like that kind of just like built this rivalry. And it went a while where we had a chance to like vote each other out, because like it was like he was immune, or I don't know what the deal was. So or like the other tribe would lose. I don't know. There was like, so that it kept building, but we both were pretty set at one point on like getting each other out. So it was like, I definitely like was very focused on getting him out by one point, because he was also focused on getting me out, which I didn't even know for a lot of it.
Well, it really felt like, because in the second tribal council where Teresa gets voted out, that's the one that like it happens like in a 12-hour turnaround or something crazy like that, right? There's just not enough time for things to get worrying. That's when I think you first hear that Eric is starting to throw your name out, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That day, it was literally like a text message. It was like, we're voting Teresa out. Like, it was very little talking. It was just like, this is what was happening. So yeah, there wasn't much time to like argue that one.
Yeah, and then
we have the classic question. What did you think of Teresa?
I thought she was super nice. I just couldn't get a read from her really. Like I didn't know if she ever trusted me. I never knew what she wanted. She would just be like, she also like the first tribal, I'm pretty sure she voted for Dane or something, which is not what we all did. Because she was just like, I'm voting for Dane. And we were like, but we're not all voting for, like, we're voting for Natalia. And she's like, so it's like, it was things like that I was like, are you just going to vote for who you want to?
And not to mention, I mean, the Dane math of like not figuring out who Natalia, like, I just can't, I can't even remember it anymore, but like the math that she was going through in her head to figure out like who voted for me, and it was clearly Natalia, is one of my favorite sort of like
iconic.
So that third tribal council, that's the one where Eric wins immunity. So both tribes go to tribal council, and Eric is targeting you. And that's when I think that's the first time you're kind of scrambling for your life, because Dane calls you or tells you and says, "Hey, they're targeting you," and you're pulling out everything you can to get this off of you. Can you talk about that?
That was chaotic.
Kind of amazing watch.
Yeah, so even watching it back, that was like 1% of what actually happened, it felt like. Because I remember I was studying in the library. I thought it was like pretty straightforward of a vote. And I think Amanda texted me first, because I was like, had an exam the next day. It was like, I remember being like kind of like stressed. And Amanda texted me, was like, Eric's throwing your name out. I close my books, run home, camp, and Tim and Amanda are in Tim's room. We were like, let's meet up right now. And then, yeah, we figure out. And then at this point, Sadie, Dane, and Eric had met. And Sadie was like, he's using his advantage. Like, you need to figure something out, basically. So I'm like, Amanda, you cannot vote for me. Like, go to rocks for me. Do what you can. Please save me. Like, I'm telling that. I figured Tim wasn't going to flip on me. I knew at that point. And then Chris also wasn't. Like, I was secure with them. So I remember running outside, and like we're all meeting, and I'm like calling Delaram. I'm like, Delaram, please don't vote for me. Do anything else. And basically I'm Dane too. I'm like, Dane, why me? Like, I kind of was playing the like why me card, because it was just, I had a good relationship with them. I didn't understand why it was me, because we all voted. This was like our voting block to start the game. So then basically Sadie, I guess they all agree, and Sadie's like, it has to be one of you guys. And I'm like, Chris. Or like, Chris didn't fall into the equation because he wasn't with our group that met early on. So he was the one person that I guess everyone kind of agreed on voting for. So basically, then she was like, okay, Eric was told Sadie everything because he like kind of needed her too. So Sadie's like, okay, Eric's stealing Tim's vote. She's like, I'm not going to rocks. I'm not playing this game. I'm voting Chris out. So at the very end of the day, she's like, you can either vote with us for Chris or you can just stay strong. So that's why even at this point, Amanda thought we were going to go to rocks. So that's why in her confessional, she's like, let's go to rocks. And meanwhile, she's the only other person that votes with Chris. Because it all happened so last minute. This is all within the course of like an hour.
Right. Do you think this sort of like panic fest cemented your relationship with Tim and Amanda and that going forward?
Yeah, I think so. Because I wasn't even sold. Me and Sadie were always tight since day one. But me with like Dane and Delaram, I had a great relationship with them. But I didn't know if I was going to go with them, go with Amanda, Chris, and Tim at this point. Like, I didn't really know where it was going to fall. But after that, the lines kind of got drawn. And that's when, yeah, me, Tim, and Amanda were solid. And I trusted Sadie so much because I know without her, it could have easily been me. But she was unwilling to vote for me.
Right.
Because what I thought was really amazing is after this episode, we see you really reassure Dane and Delaram. Both of them will say, yes, we want to work with Doug so much. And it's just it's kind of amazing. Like, wait, wasn't he part of the group that was initially going to vote you out? And didn't like Eric do all this stuff to save you? And you're going right back to him?
Why did the Screw Eric Club become so big all of a sudden?
Yeah, so in my like plea to save myself, I kind of like, I guess I guilted them a little bit. I was like, why, like, we have a good relationship. Why are you voting me out? That doesn't make sense. And then it kind of was like, you're just listening. It kind of like, I painted a picture of like, you're just listening to what Eric wants to do. You're not doing what you want to do. Then at that tribal, Eric pulled the like, if you're not with me, if you're not with me, you're against me. Like, kind of like, it kind of like filled what he was saying kind of filled what I was painting out of the like, you're just listening to him. It's not doing what you want to do. So after that point, I think they realized I was right to an extent, and they were like, kind of like, I don't know, it fell into place really nicely where they're like, oh, I am just listening and don't have a say with him, whether or not that was true.
Yes, I think that's very true. Is that Dane really has this attitude in the next episode that we see where he's like, "You can't tell me what to do. I'm gonna do whatever the hell Dane wants to do," and just kind of like goes off,
Right.
which is I think in this game, we haven't gotten to talk to Dane yet, but like in this game, when they talk so much in Modern Survivor about like big moves and like being your own sort of champion and being successful with your own wants and goals, I think it's interesting that Dane kind of gets that like, oh, I have to be in charge of my own destiny, and then immediately falls in line with your destiny.
Right. And I think the difference between me and Eric was I did a good job of making everyone feel like they were like my ride or die in the game per se. So they all felt like with me, we all had a voice, and that we were all just doing what was best for us, even though I kind of was doing what was best for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing, because Eric definitely did, and he's like, one thing I realized watching at the show is how much effort you were putting into it, and like he's like, I wasn't putting that in. I had like one or two meetings with Dane and Delaron, which I thought we were solid, but I was clearly not doing the groundwork I was needing to do to really forge those relationships. And I think you really capitalize on. I mean, this is probably not good for your GPA, but you really capitalize on with the effort you put into all the other players on this tribe.
Right, exactly. And this leads into me having very emotional connection with people on like a real level, on a game level, because from the start, it was like I got to know people in every sense, got to really understand them as a person.
How much time do you think you were putting in? And this is like a hard approximation, but like, were you trying to meet with people like every week? What was your sort of game plan in terms of socializing? Because I think that's I just watched Survivor UVA, and then I was covering Michigan, and like it really does boil down to a lot of the time how much time you're putting into meeting with people. So was that something you were consciously planning as well?
Yeah, I would like. It's always a thing. It's like you wake up and you like text someone, and it's just like make sure. And that's why like there was such a running joke I saw of people just like, why do people just wake up and tell you things? Like it's like because I would text everyone individually and make sure that they all feel like I'm talking. Like after each tribal, it's just like, oh my gosh, that was so crazy. But I send that to like everyone individually instead of just like a big alliance group chat.
Right.
So they know it's like they feel more comfortable with me. I would a lot of times it was definitely once. So every tribal would be every like 5 days, maybe on average. And I definitely would try to meet with everyone or talk to them or something before each one individually, in addition to the groups, to make it like, just so everyone knew like where I stood at each point in the game. And they felt comfortable, like, okay, we checked in before each one, just so everyone knows what's happening.
Right.
And sometimes you would have to do 2 times. If I meet with you first, then I talk to 7 other people, and I meet with you again to be like, this is what everyone else is saying.
Mm-hmm. Well, we see someone like Ivy do that sort of unsuccessfully, and Sandy had talked to us and said sort of, well, she was very clinical, and I think that's a great example of you two are on sort of opposite ends of the spectrum, where you're being as human as possible with all these people, even though it's for a very clinical reason. And
Right.
Ivy was just like, all right, I got a 10:30, so I gotta go.
Yeah,
It didn't work out for her.
exactly.
This is a shame, because that was really funny.
It really is. Yeah, I was like, I'm surprised she went home. It looked like she was putting in a lot of work, but yeah.
Oh, that tribe.
In these early episodes, did anything surprise you with what you saw from the players in the other tribe or players on your tribe and what they were doing?
Overall, I think I was interested to see the other tribe, because for my tribe, I think I was in like pretty much every conversation, it looked like, for the most part. I was like, okay. And then everything I wasn't in, I kind of knew about from someone else. So I wasn't super surprised. Overall, I would say Tim did get snubbed in the edit. I'm going to put that out there, because I think a lot of people hate on Tim for a lot of reasons. But without Tim, the whole season takes a new course. Like, he put in a lot of work and made a lot of moves that I think didn't get enough credit for. And I'm sure I can bring any of those up as we go on, because without him, a lot of things don't happen. I think that happened that are like game-changing moves probably. So I think seeing him getting snubbed a little bit was surprising. And I also think that, I guess on the other tribe, just seeing like Liam, I was very impressed by his game. I never worked with him, so I never got to see, and Liam and Morgan, I didn't get to see them super well, because obviously with Morgan, I was with her for one tribal, Liam one tribal, I think also. So I was very impressed by what they were putting in, and very happy with myself for reading the situations right in the moment, and just like trusting my gut, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think with Tim, if Tim is welcome on this podcast, even though I was probably very mean to him overall this whole season. But I think
a lot of people were.
yeah, well, oh God, there is one comment that I think is someone told him like you should go to clown college. I was like,
Yeah,
guys, it's a game. Please.
Right.
Well, I think Tim's challenge is,
Yeah.
first of all, for Naomi, she couldn't tell him and Chris apart till Chris was voted out. So that was a great episode. First, like finally, one of them's gone. I can keep this
I'm
straight
sorry
now.
to Chris, but I'm sorry.
And the second thing is, I think Tim's appearance on the show feels very second fiddle to you. I think
Yes.
a lot of those early confessionals is him kind of talking about him and his relationship with you and his partnership with you. And I think we see him always with you, like in a lot of these conversations. And I guess it's hard early on to differentiate his game until he's on a different tribe from you.
Agreed. And I think that was interesting too, because I feel like Sadie and I did the same thing, but she had a very like her own player. Whereas, but to me, Tim was the third in that, but he kind of got like the shadow edit, whereas Sadie still got like a front runner kind of thing, which was interesting to see.
So before we get to the swap, I think one of the fun things that happened in that final challenge of the pre-swap, it's the Animal Kingdom where all the losers are going to tribal council each other. And I believe you persuade Josh to give you the victory for that challenge. Do you want to kind of talk about that challenge and your thoughts and how you made that work out?
Yeah, so this is the moment I tell Anders, I'm like, this is because he didn't think of me as like a good player, honestly, until this challenge was when he's like, okay, you have control. It's like, you know what you're doing. Because until the point, it was kind of like unanimous vote. So it was kind of hard to, I guess, see who was actually doing what versus he was just talking about it. So that was the point. He was like, okay, you know what you're doing. So basically, it was a lot of confusing and chaotic energy when it's like everyone's a different animal. You don't really know what animal does what. All I knew was like how to survive is just if I survive, I don't go to tribal. And we people agreed to like throw the challenge if we start our challenge, ours gets it in, because we all wanted Eric out so bad. I told Santi, like everyone kind of knew that our tribe wanted Eric out regardless. So people weren't even worried from my tribe about going to tribal. But I knew I just like didn't want to go to tribal because of the last time I was scarred from like it almost flipping on me. Like I was like, I do not want to end up there. It wasn't a good time, even when I thought I was so safe before. So
I was just going to say, I think it's an interesting invitation to the other tribe to say, hey, we're very submissive to you. You guys pick off one of us.
Yeah, and it's like, here, let's give you a gift.
Right. No, yeah. It was really odd, honestly, too. Yeah, I didn't want to voluntarily go to tribal. That's just one of those things that if like you get burnt, no, you don't come back from that. So it got to the point where I knew it was just me and Josh alone, and me and Josh had talked before. And I was like someone that I was kind of like, oh, maybe I can work with you. Why not? So I was just like, I like begged him, like you guys saw, I was just like, please don't kill me because I don't know where I stand. I was like, Eric's going to try to come after me. I knew if I was in there that Eric would be coming after me as opposed to anyone else. So I was like, if I go there, I'm going to get targeted. So if you want to like work with me ever, just don't do this now. And then it can open a door for the future.
Mm-hmm. And it was a good pitch and it worked out. And Eric goes home, that tribal council. And you make it to the swap. Now, the swap tribes are interesting because you have Josh your tribe as well as Mike and Liam. And we see a lot in that early swap as you kind of debating, like, do we just kind of roll together and vote out Josh or what, or kind of figuring things out? And things really change once you see how the results from the other tribe once Jasmine goes home. And you're like, oh, things are really looking in our favor. Now, can you kind of talk about that merged tribe, that swap tribe dynamic and how you eventually came to say, yeah, no, Liam needs to go?
Yeah, so I was talking, so basically I didn't want Tim, I guess at Dana at this point, Tim, Dana, or Amanda to go home, or Santi from the other tribe. So I think there was shown like me talking to each of them, like in that episode, like talking to Dane, be like, you guys need to trust each other. Like I was like really trying to put in the work that I know like Santi and Tim also were doing. So this is another move that I've like, Tim did a great job of keeping everyone together. Without him, one of our own goes home. So I was
the glue to the alliance.
What'd you say?
He's like a glue, right? He's keeping people together.
Exactly. In terms of Amanda, Dane, and Santi, like if Tim isn't in that picture, like there's no way that Amanda doesn't go or Dane doesn't go home in that situation.
I think it's a great point to give credit to Tim. And like the Tim Amanda relationship is so successful that she freaking votes for him in the end, and he puts a lot of work into that, and he does a lot of things right that make her feel sort of indebted to him, and they stick together.
This might be a little unjust, but from what I hear about Choizen and Game Changers, like he was the person that kept Brad Culpepper and Sarah Listening together and made that 3-person alliance work. And And so maybe there's a bit of a comparison there, even though Troyzen also did not get a great edit in Game
Yeah.
Changers. I don't know. We won't go any further with the comparison.
I could see that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other element of all this is your relationship with Josh and what you guys do that Mike and Liam do not do. So when did you realize that Josh was like the key component of this vote and these votes that you had to do?
So at this point, I guess, well, first of all, I had to make sure Sadie was down. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, because on the show, it was shown for like 45 seconds of me being like, we need to get Liam out. This was a 3-hour conversation to me convincing her because she did not want to do it. And there was a point, I just knew that I trusted Josh because of this animal challenge. Honestly, that started it. And then he had a good relationship with Santi. And then meanwhile, Liam, I was just like, I don't know if I can trust him. And I also looked ahead. I was like, if we do the easy vote, which I feel comfortable with, if we vote Josh out, it's 3-on-3. Abby's close with Delaram. Abby's closer with Sadie than me. So if they all stay together, I'm going home next. If Abby comes with us, Mike or Liam go home next, but they've all played Quidditch together.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I don't see Abby turning on anyone but me. So that's why I was like, I need to make this move now, because if I don't vote Josh out, there's a much better chance of me going home.
Right.
So then I convinced Sadie for 3 hours, tell Delaram and I'm like, don't tell Abby. Told her pretty last minute or like pretty late, and then I wanted to get Josh on board, but I knew he didn't know. Like I knew he didn't know. So I was like, okay, how do I do this? And that's when I convinced Santi. I'm like, Santi, I know you don't trust Liam that much. So if you come along with me and convince Josh with me and he has both of us there, we'll have a much better shot at making this move work than if something else happens.
Did you have any foresight into this, what is essentially Jam plus Liam, this 4-person alliance that is like, I would say, had Liam or Jasmine even made it to the merge, would have been probably the biggest contenders to go against you in the power structure. Did you have like any inkling that even existed, or it was just pure fucking luck?
No idea. It was straight luck.
Yeah.
And also Liam having an advantage that almost screwed me over did not help him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's true.
Yeah, going off what Naomi was saying, like being able, like taking out Liam, Mike, and Jasmine of the tribe in the swap like that really cemented you come merge to not have a major opposition against you, and that's probably one of the highlights of the season is the preempting of that, because I was like, oh man, this merge is gonna be a war. We're gonna have Doug's people versus the non-Doug's people, and you're gonna go head to head, and it wasn't like that at all.
Steven.
Right, exactly. And the interesting thing too is Liam still swears by that he says like to Sadie, I would have been your bitch afterwards. And he like says he would have worked with me too. Like he really swears that he would have worked with us. And I just like literally still like can't see a path where that would successfully happen. But he still is just like, that was a bad move by you guys.
I don't think so. I mean,
right, yeah.
If Liam wants to come on the podcast, that's fine. But we haven't spoken to Liam.
Yeah, I ended up actually living with Liam my senior year of college, which was really funny.
Really funny.
Did he ever forgive you for voting him out, or do you bring that up often?
We kind of didn't really talk about it, but we're good.
Is there anybody from this sort of pre-merge that you wish you might have had a different relationship with, or that somebody you might have worked with better in the long run that could have been someone in your alliance for the merge?
I don't really think so. I would have been interested to see, because I think Liam and Mike were genuinely interested in working with me had it not worked out the way it did. Like if we just voted Josh out and say we won, I think they would have tried to work with me as long as possible until they realized it wasn't going to work out. Like I don't think I would have been someone they necessarily targeted for a while. So it would have been interesting to see how that played out. However, I'm not like I regret any of the votes that I did.
Yeah. I think also if Mike and Liam stay in the game, I think there's actually a good chance that they target Santi.
Agreed.
Considering how much they talk about him. And just, I think when you're on a tribe with somebody for a long enough time, you go like, oh, that person everybody likes that person. I think I should vote them out. I bet that would have happened with Mike and Liam for Santi. And I think losing Santi in any part from like final 10 to like final 6 would have been like bad news for you in the long run.
Right. Yeah, I would have been forced to be with Josh, Sadie, Delaram, Abby probably, and then just ride that out and then hope I win out.
Poor Josh. Poor Josh. No, if you were in control of your fate almost the whole time, Josh was literally never in control of his.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have much of a chance to.
So we haven't. Oh, Steven, I was going to talk about idols, but if you.
Oh no, that's I forgot about that. Yes, we need to talk about idols.
Yeah. So the hunt for idols really just comes down to when you feel like it at this point. But where you. We've seen some players in College Survivor try and get crafty with like fake idols and taking people on sort of wild goose chases when they know that they already have it. Did that occur to you? What was the idol strategy that was so successful for you?
So the first one, okay, they all were so convinced Josh had this idol that they were just telling us all these things like Josh has it. Liam specifically said, like, I looked at this place, which is the correct place. However, there's two of them on the building. So he straight up told me, like, this makes so much sense. Look at the clue. This is where it should have been. So then I was like, and Josh kept swearing to me that he did not have this thing. And I was like, maybe no one has it. Because if Josh doesn't have it and they all just are giving up because he has it, let me go take a peek. So that one, I looked under the thing, found it. Fun behind the scenes fact, I had to recreate all my idol finds because I wasn't filming. So that was straight me acting because you've searched so much too sometimes that you don't always get it on camera.
Yeah.
And then the second one, I got a text right out of class and I was like, okay, I think I know where this thing is. So I think it's the other tribes. I don't even remember at this point. I think it's the other tribe's idol. And I pop it out in front of the diner and I was like, oh my gosh, what? And this was all like very close to each other. I was like, oh, I can. And now I'm like, okay, I can actually tell people about one of them. Like, I wasn't going to do a goose chase because I was like, I feel like I told the people that cared enough about it, but it's like, I know Delaram's not going to be like, what about the idols? So I like didn't even have to worry about that for some people, if that makes sense. No offense.
No, that totally tracks. And I think it's a good, I'm a big maintainer of like, don't tell people you have an idol strategy, but it's a great, when you have two, tell people about one of your idols. Fuck it, why not? They're not going to get you that hard.
Right, it builds trust. And they're like, oh, he wouldn't lie to me. He told me he has an idol for some people. So it worked.
Steven, what were you going to talk about?
Well, going off the idol thing, you end up telling two people, Sadie, and you tell Santi. I think you tell Santi first, then Sadie.
I think so. I don't remember the order, but
yeah, like I know. Did you have to worry at all, kind of juggling, like, who am I gonna tell first? Do I do I tell something and say, can I then? Is it okay if I tell Sadie? Like, did you have to do any finagling with that and sharing it? Like, hey, I want to tell you and one other person.
So at this point, they weren't on this. They've never really worked together. Like, they don't even like talk to this point. So I wasn't super worried about them kind of talking between each other because this is still at the swap. So they've always been on different tribes. So I wasn't like, okay, they're gonna do anything crazy. I think, so I honestly just trusted. I might have told Santi that I told Sadie because he knew that me and her were very close. Me and her were like an obvious pair, like pretty, that got shown pretty quickly. So I think with him, I might have told him like, hey, like she knows, but it's fine. Like no one else does. I don't remember honestly. But with Sadie, I was just like, I'm pretty sure I was like, just just because I figured they weren't gonna share that between each other.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have like, once you have two idols in your pocket and you're rolling to merge, did you have plans for this, or it's like this is for emergencies only?
Emergency use only. Those things were tucked away until I could secure myself a place in the finals.
What were your plans coming to the merge? There's 11 people. You've taken out original Chakasha members for the past 3 votes. You have all your alliances together. All right.
Yeah.
The voice of God tells us that you did tell something first.
Thanks, Anders.
Andrews really remembers everything.
Yeah, seriously. So going into the merge, it was basically just pick off anyone that has a chance of coming for me, basically, because I felt like I was in a great position. And I felt like I was in control and a lot of people trusted me, even people that shouldn't necessarily trust me. So to me, it was just like a list of who trusts me the most to least. So it's like, oh, I've never worked with Morgan, Axe. And then it was just like, so I would just go from there. The first merge vote actually was so funny. Sadie was begging me to vote Amanda out. Like, please, please, please. Like, she's like, these people are all on board, like we can do it. And I was like, no, like we don't know Morgan. Why would we keep her in? That just doesn't even make sense. We know Amanda's not going to turn on us, even though Amanda obviously she did eventually come for Sadie. But I was like, we're not worried about that right now because we know everyone else would vote for Amanda when we need that to happen too. So I actually that was actually a very big fight between me and Sadie about who would go. Like that was like probably our first like power struggle between us two.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, again, it gets a little bit rocky the next few votes. But we just wanted to get off all the people that we thought could come for us because we thought we were in the top kind of positions.
So
Right.
Who were the top 3 people you wanted to vote out come merge? Like if you had to go first vote, second vote, third vote, what was that order looking like?
So for me, it would have been Morgan, Angie, and then I think everyone else had a level of trust for me. So at that point, that's when I'm like, it doesn't, I'll see where it goes from here. Yeah. Who's putting up the biggest fight?
Was Abby ever someone you kind of wanted to vote out, or was she just kind of there? No offense, Abby.
Yeah. Love Abby. She was kind of there. If she was always, I trusted her, but I also I wasn't worried about her, but I also was very willing to cut her. It just depended on the timing for her.
Yeah. And as Anders has come to say, the merge is basically Sadie going, let's do this, and Doug saying, no. Mm-hmm. Which, you know what? I enjoyed it, even still.
With Sadie, like, at this point, are you thinking like, hey, I need to bring her as far as possible, like final 3, or I need to clip her right at final 4? Like, what was your long game plan with Sadie looking like?
So Sadie was like, people like say like me and Santi were always like tight, like all this stuff. It's like me and Sadie were it. I would have gone all the way, maybe cut her final 4, but like I was planning on going all the way until we just kept getting these repetition of like her messing up and telling someone something I didn't want to, doing this, and like it kept building up to a point I was like, you're screwing me over without wanting to or trying to.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing is a relationship where somebody is too independent from you, and that's when you're on an island, it's really easy to sort of keep track of everybody. When you're on a sort of 2-day weird adventure, it's easy to keep track of everyone. But when you're in like a 90-day long game, the independence factor is so huge, and kind of where I think Sadie's downfall really is that she, instead of operating completely separate from you, she's always tangentially operating away from you and then being like, hey, Doug, I did this thing. And you're like,
right.
What?
Exactly, like sending screenshots, all this stuff, and just I don't know. Somehow she would work her way out, but throw me under the bus, but also do it enough where that person doesn't really lose that much trust in me. It was got interesting.
One thing about the merge is, I got that. It's like, when you're playing the game, do you ever wonder like, how am I going to get portrayed? What's this going to look like as the final product? Because I think for us, the viewers, you kind of at this point are kind of the villain of the season, right? You're running the show. You have 2 idols. You have all the power. We're now gravitating more towards the underdogs who might be coming against you come the merge. Even in this merge episode, you're like, should I go meet with Morgan and be friends with her and then vote her out? You're kind of like, well, that would be fun to do. I can't remember who's telling you, like, no, Doug, don't do that.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize until super late. Like I thought, again, it looked so stupid looking back on it when I was like, haha, Eric's the villain, because of when he's like, oh, you're with me or you're against me. Like to me, I saw him as the villain, and then I was like, I was the one that went against him. Like I got my like heroic arc, whatever, and it's like so opposite. Like I did not know that was gonna happen. I think that also happened with me. I think I didn't realize how like the Liam vote, people were super upset. To me, that was me in an underdog position, being in the minority with only 3 people on a tribe, kind of like doing the underdog thing, but then it's still everyone was just like, oh my gosh, he's just getting his way. So I think at this point I wasn't going to get the villain edit until like finale time, like final 6 on, honestly. But yeah, I definitely I knew I was making snarky comments throughout, and like Anders wouldn't encourage those, could make him laugh. So
yeah,
I can see how
you have a snarky bastard at the head of the whole operation, right? It's always gonna be encouraged. Well, and I think also in Survivor, and we actually saw this in the season of Survivor New York that I just had air, is that when one of our players is like, my favorite type of alliance is when somebody is in charge and just never lets go. And that's what kind of happened to you, but everybody else fucking hates it. Mm-hmm. And it's not a bad way to play Survivor. And I think now that we have sort of the 2020 hindsight, moves like getting Liam out and getting Mike out, getting somebody like Eric, or losing Chris to sort of satisfy Eric and then usurping against Eric. These are all really, really good moves that indicate a high level of gameplay, and people just didn't like it because it didn't serve their underdog fantasy. But sometimes that's not how Survivor goes. And I hope that people will sort of look back on the season with a little more sort of like less disappointment and more sort of excitement at what can happen in College Survivor.
Exactly. I think that's why I thought I was making moves that were a little bit unpredictable, but yeah, people just weren't pleased.
Well, I think your pre-merge is a masterclass. I think everyone should watch and see what you're doing and how you're doing it, how you're handling your alliances and your tribes and the opposition against you, and how you're working across two tribes and exploiting those relationships you have. Like, what you do is fantastic. I mean, do you have any regrets about the pre-merge?
No, I really don't. I was very proud of my game, and I was like, okay, I'm liking this right now. This is living up to my expectation of Survivor.
Yeah, and I think Steve and I have covered a lot. Like, it's, if you want to win a College Survivor, you got to put in the time, and you got to put in the time with the relationships and the time in the game. And I think that a lot of people are very busy, obviously, especially when you cast like a bunch of STEM majors, like, good luck. But at the same time, it's a good, your game is a good indication of how much time you want to put into people, so that by the end of it, you are losing people who are going to the jury as a fan of you and as your friend.
Exactly.
Also, Anderson said that the real puppet master is Delaram. She said, "Watch me go from invisible to winner." Okay.
You mentioned this a little earlier. It's like you really put the time and effort in to get to know the people in your tribe, becomes friends with them. And one of the challenges is like voting. You have to vote them off eventually. You have to let go of them. You have to do so in a way they want you to win. And so I imagine as like the pre-merge, like, well, these are people I don't really know, or people who are working against me. But as you're coming to this merge, and you essentially have, once you go to Morgan, you're like, well, here's around like 9-10 people I like and I want to work with. How, like, that's got to be really difficult at that point.
Oh, it was super tough because Tim had been pushing voting Sadie. He wanted Sadie out pretty quickly, and it's like, I don't want to vote Sadie out. It's like, I don't want to vote Tim out. I don't want to vote Santi out. But I was like, kind of willing to do it. It's just, there was no great option for me, so that's why I kind of went for like Amanda. I think also was a good player in the game, but she was also in like a weaker position and someone that I could see kind of like rallying people to go against us. So that's why it just worked out, where it was just when it was her time, it was her time.
Yeah, that's Amanda's somebody who didn't have the relationships at that point that she goes home, but probably could have if it was like 2-3 steps down the line, because that's what she was really working for, right? Is we sort of see her wings get kind of clipped when she goes home. Poor Amanda, really another target of just like the internet's ire that doesn't deserve it.
Agreed, she did not deserve it. I think that for her too, like, they didn't really show this. Sadie is like the most competitive in the best way person I've like ever met. Like, Santi talked about her flag football skills, I know, for like ever. So like Sadie losing that first steal to bacon, she did not let that go. Like, to this day, you can ask her about it and she like will talk about it. So it's like, really, Amanda also got screwed over in the sense that it's like something like that also is just an immediate wall that she couldn't work with Sadie because Sadie was just against her for literally losing one round and steal the bacon. So there were also ways that like she kind of was forced to come to us because like Stellaram was already with Sadie at that point. So like her options were limited.
Right.
I would say.
Well, I felt like Amanda's game was very much like we said that like Sadie's game was kind of contingent on you. Amanda's game was also very contingent on you. We don't see any alliances in that pre-merge except for your alliance of 4 for your dorm, you, Chris, her, and Tim. And she was able to branch out when she hits the swap. She gets Dane and Tim, but it felt like she struggled to really get people to work with, and maybe if she survives, maybe if she survives about it, she's able to pick up Angie and maybe pick up another person beyond that. But it really felt like her game was very much hinged on you.
Right. Exactly. And that's the unfortunate thing, is as soon as I was ready to let her go, it just that's when it crumbled.
Yeah. And the other part of this is like Dane is really becoming he's becoming La Cucaracha. He's becoming Dane the Unstoppable. And I'm curious about like what you were thinking when this is all going down, because it really feels like there's always the option to vote out Dane, and it never happens. Were you part of the sort of contingency that was keeping Dane safe and keeping him sort of in the game longer than maybe he should have been? No, not that Dane played a bad game, but that like he kept sticking around. And it was like, how the fuck is he still here?
Yeah. So to me, like I talked about Abby, Dane was equivalent. Dane trusted me for whatever reason. I didn't always trust him, so whenever it was his time to go, I was more than willing to vote him out at any given point. But he wasn't like a priority to vote out because he did trust me. So like if say anyone wanted to vote him out at any point, I would have been like, yeah, sure, that's fine, I'm down. So it really just, again, was the timing thing. It's just like I was willing to, but I wasn't really going to stick my neck out to vote him out because it was kind of equivalent with a few other people, I would say.
Right. And he's also, I'm trying to think of what Survivor characters this is like, but he's one of those characters where everyone's like, when you're on the bottom, you're like, well, I'll vote for Dane, right? You guys don't like Dane, right? I'll vote for Dane. And then it's always like, oh, maybe.
Yes.
No, it's you. Like
he also had so little social equity that no one was really worried about him being a threat. So because we're all like, if Dane wants to make a move, he's not going to be able to. He just doesn't have the relationships to do it. So that's why no one. Again, it's like we weren't really scared of him either. So.
Mm-hmm. Man, I have to think of who that Survivor comparison is like, but I don't.
I have one.
What?
Aurora from Edge of Extinction.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Where she's a player that's consistently on the bottom. There's a lot of talk about voting her out, but it never actually manifests for the longest time until she gets clipped at like final 6 before the eventual winner Chris comes back in.
Oh man,
right. That's a good comparison.
Yeah.
Remember when we were living in a world where Chris Underwood came back at final 6 and we could watch it at a bar together? God fucking help us all. Sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
Well, one thing that surprised me, because after the Amanda vote out, we learned that Sadie's really reeled in both Delaram and Abby, and they're this very tight threesome, which surprised me. And how to phrase this? How did Sadie get to those two before you could?
I know. They were Delaram and Abby were the two people that weren't more me than Team Sadie. Basically, because they were in the same, like, I guess, the same tribe with me, we were always the same, but I don't know really what it was necessarily, that Delaram and Sadie just were a little bit closer than me and Sadie were. I kind of just knew that. I think it could have come down to, like, around, like, the Eric vote, too. It's kind of like they kind of made the Chris decision a little bit more together. So it's like I was still involved, but I think they kind of had a little more of a relationship. And then Abby, also, they also weren't playing the game super hard. So it's kind of just like, oh, we trust Sadie. And I think that they knew I was doing more. I had my hand in more cookie jars. And I think Sadie gave off. So they knew that I was a little bit shady because they would find out like I had an idol from Sadie. So it's like Sadie was able to pull them in. I think that was also a good thing that she did, was telling them that I had an idol. So she was able to have them. And then they both were they're very loyal and didn't hide it at all to her. So it was definitely a concern to a lot of people.
Yeah, because everyone's something like, this is a thing, and we're like, is it? And then we're like, oh no, I guess this is a thing. As we like the following episode, we see them all talking together and strategizing.
Yeah. Right.
Also, this Dane is Chris Underwood. Hate speech will not be tolerated. I will block you.
Andrews, does this mean that you're gonna have another returnee season for us where Dane plays and there is an Edge of Extinction? Should we get excited for that?
I would love that, where they just literally had to stay in a dorm the entire semester.
Sounds
They
miserable.
can't leave.
With all the people that we voted out.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Oh no. Go ahead,
Did you
Steve.
get your third idol at the final 9?
It was I think it was final 9. Because I know it was like right before Sadie tells me about it, I get it, she gets voted out.
Okay, so or was that final 8 then?
I think it was final 9 I got it, because I think we made it through 1.
Okay, because the two things I think for final to talk about is you have probably one of the biggest decisions of your game, which is, do I go with Sadie, Delaram, and Abby, or do I go with the rebels of Angie, Dane, and Tim?
Right. So this is where Tim needs way more credit. Justice for Tim is the Josh vote. So this is the point where we're voting Dane out. Like, it's happening. It's finally happening. We're finally just like, whatever. He doesn't deserve to be here. Get him off of here. So it's happening. And then Tim wants, well, I guess not Sadie out, but like pretty much Sadie out so badly. But they somehow, I don't really know the thing, they settle for Josh basically. Mm-hmm. So this is the point. I think this is the right time. Maybe I'm kind of mixing the Josh and the Sadie vote. To me are kind of like once Josh goes home, Sadie's just next. It's written in the stars.
Right.
So basically I have to pick who do I stick with the Tim, Angie, Dane, Santi and vote Josh out, or do I do Sadie, Delaram, Abby, and Josh and vote for Dane out? So whichever squad I vote with, I'm riding it to the end with them, I'm assuming, because I don't think there's much room for flipping and flopping, because I think the alliances are so, like, it's not like
right.
Abby and Dane are ever gonna, or like, you know, Abby and Tim even are ever gonna like come together and do anything. Like, it's like there is a clear line in the sand. So basically we're ready to vote. And then Tim is so set on voting in this other side, like working with Dane and Angie to vote out Sadie/Josh. And then I get a call. So basically I think he convinces Santi. I know, because Santi calling me was what turned me basically, because he's like, they were all four together at this point. And I'm like, it's very close. This is 30 minutes before. Like, I'm still ready to vote Dane out. He's like, this is happening. We're voting Josh out. And then they were all together. Tim's like, it's happening. Like, we're doing it. Yes. So this is when the game's turning. And I'm like, I would say Sadie's gonna be so mad at me. So I meet with Sadie right before Tribal, like literally. And this is when she basically says, this wasn't even on camera because we just didn't film it. And she basically says to me, like, if you don't vote with us, like, that's really going to betray my trust. Like, basically, she basically kind of makes it sound like, if you don't vote for Dane, it's done. Like, I can't trust you anymore. Mm-hmm. And at this point, they're all so gung-ho on voting Josh out. So that's when I'm like, if I stick with Sadie, Dom, Abby, and Josh, she already messed up with Josh at this round too. Like, Josh, I'm already nervous if Josh actually trusts me, because this is when she sends Josh like a whole text string of why she wants to get Josh out, but then throws me under the bus in the process. So that's when I'm like, I don't think I can work with this group of four, because they're all tighter than they are with me. And then this other group is so ready to vote Josh out, which I'm fine with, because I already messed up with him this round because of Sadie, that I'm like, yeah, then that changed the game.
Do you think, because it sounded like what Sadie did a lot of the time was sort of just threaten you in terms of your relationship one-on-one, did you need some reassurance from her to say, well, even though I have Delaram and Abby, they are 3 and 4, like, it's you and me to the end? Did you need that from her to sort of be more likely to stick around? Or was it just kind of like, well, Josh doesn't like me anymore, so bye-bye?
I think it was I knew it didn't, even if she probably did say that to me, but I just knew Delaram and Abby were like, because they're so straightforward. Like, we all just knew that they were going to stick with Sadie, and Sadie was going to keep them, because it was so obvious she would beat them in the end. Like, I just, like, from a logical standpoint, she couldn't convince me that she would pick me over either of them too.
Right.
So I think that went with it. But also I was like, okay, Josh, our relationship, I think it's rocky enough right now that I can do this new thing. So that's when it turned.
At this point, you have two idols. And because like the final five of you, Santi, then Delaram, Abby, and Sadie sounds pretty awful, right? Because it's an easy 3-2. They vote out Santi, or they vote out you, and you're at their mercy. But if you have two idols, right, and so you can protect yourself at the 6-5, or just double idol play at the final 5, you could potentially make that work, right? Like, you could have, maybe you idol out Sadie, so you go 2-2 so you have the roommates at the final 4, and you probably beat them in the final challenge, or you guarantee fire because you have Santi with you, or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good. I didn't really think like that, I guess, because I'm too selfish. So I was like, okay, I have one for me each round, as opposed to like, I could use this on someone else.
Yeah. No, I mean, but even then, like, you can 6-5. It's like as long as no one sees it coming, like you can get yourself to that final 4, which is huge.
Right. Looking back on that is a very like viable option.
But yeah, definitely, like, maybe Sadie says, I like Josh more than Santi, and tries to take out Santi final 6 instead of Josh, and then you're sad, and there's a lot could go wrong.
You're so sad. I guess I had a thought, which is, have you seen any Survivor Maryland previous to this season happening? Had any seasons come out, or have you watched anything?
Yeah, so we watched up through Guts and Glory before I played.
So were you Is there anything you maybe learned from Survivor Maryland previous seasons that you were trying to apply here, or were you just really using like your Survivor fandom to get you this far?
I think my Survivor fandom, there was nothing I think from the previous seasons that I was like necessarily taking from. I guess maybe just to learn how to like just I guess like watching people, you obviously get to see like who put in the effort, who convinces who. Like watching people like Victoria and like Chris LeCompte, you're like, okay, they're doing a very good job of being able to like work with all these people, having options, keeping their end game as I guess giving themselves the best chance, kind of. So that's like I was kind of doing that, but I also have seen that on the real show. So
You didn't go buy a domino set and practice lining up dominoes on like a,
right.
a bench in one of the fields somewhere?
I know I did not do that, but I really should have, looking back.
Well, the other thought I had was maybe I don't have it in my head anymore, but these votes were after Sadie goes home. After Sadie goes home. Oh, sorry.
I think we need to talk about it because I think this is probably the worst thing that could happen to your game is Sadie going home here.
Yeah. So this also, Tim wouldn't not let Sadie go home this round. He's like, Sadie's going home, and I'm like, Tim, no. Like this is the first time I really, honestly, I didn't get my way. Is final 8, I would say. Because Tim's like so set on it, and then Santi also got really, because Santi kind of was also really set on it.
Mm-hmm.
Dane and Angie were set on it because Sadie's a huge threat, and I was like, guys, please, like vote out Del Armor Abby. No, not Sadie, because she had just given me her idol, so I was feeling super guilty, and she was kind of guilting me into it too. It's like I told you where this idol under the balance beam was, and then you're just gonna pocket it and let me go home. Like, so me and Sadie had such a good relationship at this point. Like we're such good friends. I literally couldn't write her name down. So I guess what wasn't on the camera probably is I say we're all 5 are meeting and they're not budging. Sadie's going. I'm like, okay, everyone stop. I'm like, please. Like I like give one last plea before tribal. I'm like, guys, will you please just vote Abby out? That'll make us all happy. Sadie won't go home. I'm like giving this full-on elaborate spiel. I say, so I'm voting Abby, and I just leave, and I go to tribal. Even though they 4 still had the majority, like they could have really voted me out if they wanted to at that point. But I was like, I don't want to hear it. If you, whatever happens, but let's vote Abby out. I'm voting Abby, and I just walk away.
So you have now 3 idols, all right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, were you thinking this is my 7-6-5, or with 3 idols, like that's kind of momentous. You're like, well, maybe I can burn one. Was there any chance you could have like slipped one to Sadie to save her through that?
Oh, that's honestly when I walked away, I was debating it internally so bad. I was like, I was willing to. Honestly, I would have just been like, you gave it to me at the end. Like, here you can have it back. I really thought about Sadie because I thought if I blew one on Sadie, I'd still have 2 more. And then like Angie would have got. I think they voted for Angie that round, and I never really trusted Angie. And I was like, that wouldn't have been a bad move. And that was something I really, yeah, okay. So that was something I really debated. I ended up just not doing it because I didn't want to lose trust with the other people. But it was because I thought if I did that, like, where would I stand? Because I still feel like Angie, like, I don't know. I just didn't know where would have stood afterwards. But it's something that I really considered.
Well, could you have like slipped her before tribal council so no one would have seen it, and therefore your hands are clean potentially?
I'm pretty sure I had told Santi about it, or I told someone to the point that they would have known I would have given it to her.
Right. Yeah, I think in the long run, yes, it is like a move out of your control. And at the same time, Sadie is the leader of the uprising. And so to lose her means that Delaram and Abby sort of go to the wind, and you no longer have to really like worry about an actually strong opposition until like Angie, Delaram, and Dane get together, which, you know, isn't something I think anyone could have predicted.
Right. Oh yeah, I don't think them had like spoken like until like I don't think Delaram and Angie literally had spoken until.
Yeah, I think Angie and Delaram both confirmed that to us, that they had literally never talked until right before that vote, which is insane and so funny.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask about because after this, Dane wins immunity, right? He wins the poll, or does he win it when Sadie goes home?
I won the 7 immunity.
Yeah.
So
the 8 immunity is the poll immunity.
It's the poll immunity.
Yeah, that's
This is where Sadie's like, oh, we're all voting Dane, and everyone walks off, and Dane like spends like 3 hours persuading Angie, and he spends so much time persuading Angie, and then you have like great sarcastic comments to Dane. It's like Dane, did you just not trust me? Like, why did you feel the need to stay up there so long?
Yeah.
Are we in an alliance together?
Yeah, I thought I just like really like went out on a limb voting Josh out. I just like really betrayed Sadie, all this for them to stand on the poll for like an hour and a half longer than anyone else. I was like, what?
Yeah, that's my favorite part of like your game is that if anybody had just looked a little closer at what you were saying, they would know exactly how you felt, which is like, Dane, why don't you trust me? Like you didn't think, and the passive aggressive Doug makes me laugh so much because it's always fully showing your cards, but nobody thinks harder about it to like maybe go, oh, wait a minute. I get it. This is why this is a problem.
Right.
Yeah. And so Dane winning that immunity, I think really hyped Dane up in his like he really felt something, but he also forms this bond with Angie. Were you afraid of that at all, considering they were the final two sort of locked on that poll?
Oh yeah, I knew that they both, Dane and Angie at this point, were the scariest players. I wasn't scared of Sadie, Abby, Dharma, honestly, and like anyone else. I wasn't really scared that they would come for me personally.
Right.
Dane and Angie were the two. I was like, they would vote me out if they had the chance to. So yeah, it was especially the fact that they held on to that poll for so long and they didn't need to. I was like, it doesn't make sense. So I had my eye out for them.
Yeah, that I think is it is really funny that like Dane just that's what the Dane train, like bullet train, takes out of the station is he's like, I want immunity. It's gonna be kick ass. And then you win immunity right after, and it's like, well, nah, it's not gonna be Doug.
Right.
So the final 7 is interesting. So we see you and Santi attempt to broker the roommate alliance.
Right.
It's like can we make things actually work between Delaram and Abby and me and Santi? And why was this fated to never be?
That's a great question. We had options at this point, but we knew just with Abby and Delaram, you never truly know what they're gonna do, I guess. And I think Santi also was more into this Dane and Angie pair than I was. So this is where me and Santi really started to make more decisions together. Is like Final 7 is definitely once we started to, I would say, and like for real. And so that's why we really contemplated this one too. We just didn't know. We were just trying to look at our way to the end. And it was just, for me, I felt like a lot of times I would have honestly multiple paths to make it to Final 4. I just never really knew what the best one at that point would have been. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was definitely an option, but Abby only talked so much that you never truly knew where Abby stood.
Right. And I think there's, Abby is is a fascinating character with like her, I guess it's in a way it's like slam poetry of you guys at the final tribal council, but like it's this weird line where you're like, is Abby not invested? And then she is, and you're like, oh shit, she totally is. But then she's not invested enough to like actually gain any social capital that would keep her safe besides Sadie. And then it all comes tumbling down. All this stuff that you're like, Abby's a really fascinating character where I wonder if she played Survivor again, would she try harder and would it be a really interesting player or would it be the same thing? Like,
right. And I also, thinking back now too, I remember hearing after I won immunity, Angie told Santi that Abby was like, her and Abby talked about voting me out. So that's why I was also very willing to vote Abby out, because I was like, oh, she said my name, haha, bye. Like that's kind of like how I was playing the game. I was like, if someone says my name, that's when it's time, their time's up. So that also didn't help. And then with Abby too, in general, it's like everyone else, if you talk about Survivor, you have a conversation, it's 30 minutes to an hour, maybe more, but obviously like that's like the average. Abby was a 10-minute conversation for a long one kind of thing. It was like, but I trusted her because she was so straightforward. It'd be like, Abby, we're doing this, or like, want to do this? What do you think? She'd tell you straight up, and it'd just be like, okay. You didn't really have to like think through it. You didn't have to go super far ahead. You could just, it's just what it is, what it was.
Right.
Yeah, so go ahead, episode where Delaram's running around too when Abby's off at her Quidditch tournament, kind of trying to maybe beat up get people to vote out Santi as well, which I don't like. She's a little everywhere too, which cannot help with like any sort of cementing trust between you all.
Right, exactly. It's like it was made us a little too nervous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also just like the roommates.
Right.
hey, these roommates gotta go.
Yeah.
Don't look at me and Santi. I'm like, don't talk.
Literally, it's like their roommates, not us.
Well, and then final six is really where shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that for sure. But going into final six with you having won immunities, people knowing about certain idols being out there, what were you trying to do? What were your moves that were being made in sort of preparation for what you knew was like, I have 2 more tribals to play my idols and that's it? Like, where was your head at?
So my head was, my game is so visible right now, and I think people know that it took this whole season, but I was like, people finally realized like I'm running things. Like Delaram and Abby, or Delaram started like, on mine and Delaram's last conversation, looking back, it's like we like hugged afterwards. Like it was a good, like we knew it was like just like our last time talking about Survivor, like in a way we can trust each other after I voted Abby out. Like it was one of those things, like I knew that our relationship was cut, and then I knew, again, like every single tribal, I knew where every single vote was going. So I was like, okay, this is fine. I know what I'm doing. No one knows what this last idol, but no one really needs to know about it. It was getting to the point where I was like, I don't know if I necessarily need to play all my cards because I've been so in control and just have known where things are going and happening. So I went in with the same confidence that I've been having all season, kind of just understanding where everything is going to go. So with the idol play, I was fully ready to play it on Santi, basically because I figured Santi I trusted to take me further. So I was like, I want to save one of us two, but I also was like, okay, I don't want to go ahead and spend all these idols and then people guarantee cut me at 4.
Yeah, and I think that Santi had said something along the lines of that he wanted to keep the idol for the next round if possible. And it really was this sort of like spiraling out of control. I think I'll have to find the Steven messages, because Steven was messaging me like, what? Wait, what? Like losing it.
Well, it's just, can you talk a little bit like the decision to not play the idol, right? So
Yeah.
which I'm sure you've thought well and hard for a long time in the past 4 years.
Oh yeah, the emotion of like seeing my name, like I've never felt anything like close to that, and I can still get like heart palpitations from thinking about it.
At that point, nobody's written your name down, right?
Right, correct. Crazy.
It's an experience, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Quotes is like, shit. So like it. To have it so late
of an idol is just like even more like, there's
right. And with 3, I was literally, when I saw my name the first time, I was like, I'm going down as the dumbest player in Survivor ever. To be so in control and then to go home with 3 idols would just be like, that. I even think about it now just works me up. But I would say, so I knew Delaram, Dane, and Angie. Dane and Angie had a relationship. Delaram literally didn't speak to either of them two the whole season. Like I was like, no, there's no way. Tim and Santi, I knew where they stood basically on the fact, but I was like, there's no way, because I knew that they knew I had 2 idols also. So I was like, they think I'm playing it both times, so they're not going to vote for me. And I was like, they've also never spoken to each other. So why would they literally talk to each other for the first, again, looking back, it's like, okay, they obviously are going to, but I just like thought there was no way, just because I knew where everything was happening the whole season. I was so confident that I was never even surprised by like hearing about 2 people like speaking to each other, that the fact that they met for one time, I was just like, there's no way. And I nearly didn't have like majority anyway, because I was so confident in my friends like Tim and Santi too, that I was just like, I don't need to play this thing. And then I also was debating, I honestly almost played it the whole time too. I was just like, then he started reading the votes already, and I was so just like, okay, I guess I'm not playing it. Like I guess I never really committed to playing it.
Was it the surprise of Santi not playing his at all too that contributed to you not playing it?
Yeah, so I was pretty certain Santi was going to play his, and then I was thinking I was ready for Santi to play his, then me to play mine. Actually, that was kind of like my game plan. And then I was like, okay, if that happens, then people don't know about this third one. They're going to vote for me next round, and I'm going to pull it out, and I get to vote whoever wants to go home.
Yeah,
so that was in my mind.
I have 2 great highlights from the chat between me and Steven, which is, what is this greed? Doug didn't play an idol, neither did Santi. And I say the turmoil. And they went to rocks for Doug. What is this gameplay? They didn't even 2-2-2 Doug and Santi. I can't believe I nearly watched someone with 3 idols. Nearly get voted out at final 6. What on earth is going through Doug's mind?
Right.
And then later, the other comment that you say is oh shit, yeah. If I had 3, I would have saved you, Dane, is a quote that you say.
Right.
And then my response to that was bruh. So it really is a situation where they're kind of outmaneuvering you, but there's also not. And we also know that in this situation, Tim basically gets spooked, and that's why like things don't really work out, and they don't 3, 2, 1.
Council second time.
Right.
Yeah, so it's really, again, Tim saving your butt on this one.
Agreed. And there's a funny, I don't even know if it was shown because I didn't watch this one, but I like lean over to Tim at the tie and I'm like, Tim, if you flip, I will kill you. Like I said it with such seriousness in my voice too, that I was like, no, he's not, like, don't do it, Tim. With the reboot.
Oh man, so many things with this tribal council amazes me, right? You don't play your idol. Santi doesn't play the idol. Santi goes the rocks with an idol in his pocket. Like if Santi could have very well just walked out with one of the idols as is.
Right, would have taken your idol away.
Right. Yeah. No. Looking back, still, it's crazy. Crazy.
Would you think you would have been mad at Santi if he like left with one of your idols?
No, because he went to rocks for. Because if he didn't, I would have been on the wrong end of that, so I wouldn't have been mad.
It's fair.
And I still had 2 at Final 5, so yeah.
And Angie going home is kind of your best case scenario, actually.
Absolutely incredible. It worked out so not the way it was supposed to, but perfectly for me. What I thought.
So, is it really better for her to go home than Delarue?
Looking back, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. But looking like in the moment, yes. Because I was just like, me and Delarue still had a good relationship regardless. Like I still felt like there was room there. Me and Angie was always just like, she wants me to go home. Like, it was just like, I knew it was the lost cause talking to Angie at this point.
I mean, you've made it to the Final 5. You just had Santi and Tim. Well, Santi go the rocks for you. Is there anything you looking back you would have changed about the votes leading up to that point, or who was sitting there at the Final 5 that could have helped you in this game? Like,
the thing is, not really. I obviously wish I would have played an idol at 6 just to avoid that chaos and that mess. Mm-hmm. But looking back, it's like I think everyone in that situation, like it would have been a similar situation of like people see me as like the top contender at this point, no matter what ended up happening. And I also had an idol, so I knew that I wouldn't have gone home regardless. So therefore, I didn't know to me, it wasn't a terrible option because I figured Santi was the only person I trusted to take me to the end. So he was there with me, and that's all I really could ask for at that point.
Was there any temptation to just slam dunk Dana out of the game with just playing all 3 of your idols and just forcing him to walk out? I mean, I know you're saying I need to mitigate my threat. I've played a big enough game as is, but was there any temptation to be a first in Survivor and do that?
Yes, it was very tempting to just be like, actually, never. Like, I'll just control this one. Anders don't even bother speaking. Like that definitely ran through my head. But I just, again, it was the managing my threat. I couldn't just go out there and I guaranteed go home next if I did that.
Because one of the things that surprised me was that at this point, people knew you had 2 idols. Santi had one, you have one, you get the one back from Santi, right? Those are public, and you've been very clear with Tim and say, I'm not like, you've been lying to him this time, not saying the idols, because he's like, I think you said in the recap with because he has all these other options that you're afraid of. Why tell him about that 3rd idol? Why tell anyone about the 3rd idol? Why not just let that 3rd idol just go to rest? No one needs to ever know about it because it's going to cause so much more concern and discord if it's revealed.
Right. So at this point, this is when Final 5 is when things started really crumbling just in general. Like the whole world just felt like it was crumbling around me. Tim, I remember, was talking about doing something. I remember we're walking over and like I was super like heavy-hearted because I knew at this point, this is when I knew they were turning on me. Like this is when like they weren't talking, because again, we're like super good friends outside the game. This is when they weren't talking to me right. It was just weird energy for the past week at this point after Final 6. Because I knew they were going to vote me out. Like I knew they wanted me to go home. And this is like, but they wouldn't say it. It was just really terrible. So I remember Tim saying, he said something to trigger me to be like, I just remember being really like feeling very vulnerable and being like, well, I have this third one, so I'm, no matter what, I'm safe. Because there was a point I was like, maybe I should keep dating and get Delaram. I think Delaram out, or there was something like along those lines. So I was like, because I had the options, and he was like, that's when it was, yeah. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's also a point where in this Final Five, you're trying to. It's this weird part of the game where anybody who's the biggest threat is trying to downplay their threat, but then also make moves that will set them up for. It's like this, you're trying really hard to make sure that people don't think you're a threat at Final Four, but then you're also like, well, what if I idle out Delaram? Fuck it, I can, and the two don't mix, and they're not. One's not going to lead you to the successful Final Four. So it really is this weird tightrope to walk. And I think being able to read moods, and then also I think something you do well over the course of this game is you're able to sort of fake moods, right? You're able to keep somebody thinking it's going to be fine and it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. It's not me. And while it might seem a little mean with like Morgan, it is pretty successful overall in the game.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's one of those things that it's like, yes, it's like with Morgan that came off terrible, was terrible, I even said it in the first place, but it made Morgan also not even want to work with me to vote Amanda out. It's like one of those things that it's like my name wasn't even brought to by the people going home, even though I was probably the one sending them home.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, Final Five, the Jane train pulls into the station and it's no more. I'm curious at what point you start having like the tough conversations with people of like, are you going to keep me in at Final Four? Because we know the challenge is right after this vote. Do you remember when you started having those tough conversations with people of like, what does your Final Four look like? What does your Final Three look like?
I think I knew at this point that it was already down, because I remember losing the Final Four challenge and just like me and Tim didn't speak we like still went to the basketball game. There was a basketball game right after, and we didn't speak the whole 2 hours we were there. So I think, and we sat next to each other, so that was great. So it definitely happened. It definitely happened. I don't remember. It was like before. It was like Final Five is again when things started really spiraling.
Oh my gosh! And I think I said it on the when you guys were all doing an interview, but it feels like at this point this game is so emotional to you, and it means so much that. I know people see this as like really villainous and manipulative, but what I saw was you cared a lot about being in this game. And not only that, but it was your two best friends that were going to send you home. And I think that's a really hard pill to swallow in this situation. If it was just like three strangers, okay, I'm the biggest threat, but like your two friends who, for all intents and purposes, like are hurting your friendship. What point did you decide that you were going to say to Santi, like, this is how I feel and this is what you're doing to me if you vote me out?
Yeah, so I don't really think I planned it ahead, because it was just what I was feeling. Like, I don't think I was like, okay, I'm going to go into this and like talk. Once it came out with Santi, then I thought about it with Tim because it was like a similar conversation. But it was one of those things where it's like our friendship grew so much from just like you saw how much time I put into like everyone. It's like including them, obviously. I talked to them all the time. We hung out all the time. And I would trust, it's the sense of like putting trust in them of like the game, but it's also like we would talk about real life things, and I would trust them with so much more than just the game. So it's like to be taking away, it feels like trust, like all these things that are way more than the game in addition to just the game, which I've put so much into, is when it really just like overwhelmed me. And that's and then also the past week, we hadn't been talking real, like it's super weird to even describe. It's like we couldn't even like talk about like get dinner together normally, just like with our other roommates who like have no investment in Survivor. Because there was just this weird energy that it's like I was like, is this just gonna be what it is? Like it was scary, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that Santi talked about is he wished that you and him had talked about boundaries going into the season. And he's like, I don't think it would ever cross my mind until I think he and you had that conversation about that first idol. And you can maybe joking, maybe serious, say like, hey, like, don't you dare vote me out now that I've told you this. Don't you send me.
For the record, he said it first. I sent him the clip because he didn't believe me. He said mine had a worse tone to it, but he said it first. But yeah,
the receipts are there. It's all there.
It's on there. But yeah, no, we didn't do that because it's one of those things. It's like you're having a game. It's like, oh, we should vote Amanda out, but also like this is my life story here. Let me trust you. But also let's we could vote Abby out next. You know, it's like you kind of like we kind of would just the conversation we just talked for a long time. And it just wasn't always about Survivor, so it wasn't like okay, let's just do Survivor talk and then the rest is just life. They kind of all just intertwine, and that's where it's like comes with like trust and like caring about the other person. Like it's just it all became one. That was like what our relationship grew past our just normal friendship before.
Do you wish you had a conversation like that going into the season, or like saying like, hey, you know, like what's going to happen if we have to vote each other out?
It's one of those things that it's like looking back, obviously, like we should have, but also our relationship grew so much as friends and with Tim that it's like we're so close now because of everything that happened that it's like I wish we didn't have to go through it, but also I don't think we would have been as close, or maybe I wouldn't have gotten, I don't know. I think so much could have changed that I can't really say that I wish we did at the beginning because I don't know how, like, I don't know what it would have been like. And maybe, like, obviously it's like I'd never want to get into fights with my closest friends.
Yeah, I mean, I've played live reality games with my friends that are much shorter, but, like, people who I'm very close to where I think if we had been in your spot where, like, I had the power, like Santi did, to sort of vote my friend out, it would have been, like, emotionally hellish to try and do that if that was me winning the game versus not winning the game. And I think that some people are just very lucky where their friends go home or their friends don't have the power, and you guys just got put in, it's like you built your own sort of horrible emotional like prisoner's dilemma for yourselves. And it just became like, oh shit, we're just gonna watch some people like and I think some people love to be negative and what's the word? Cynical about friendships and be like, oh my God, are you guys really that best friends? And it's like, yeah, I mean, didn't you have friends in college? Like, didn't you like, weren't some people very close with their roommates? Like, that's what it is. You live with this person and it becomes really hard.
And I think you can see that on any reality show, like especially the past year with like Big Brother All-Stars. It's like they're all like literally not friends anymore. And they were before. They built this alliance based off friendship coming into the house, and now they're literally not friends anymore because of how it ended. Same with Survivor even. It's like they just like when Ben just like kind of just like, we're friends, I could win $2 million, but I'm just gonna go home. Like it's like crazy that like obviously everything plays out differently, but I think in every scheme of any social interaction game, it does have a big role that, and as a fan, again, when I see stuff like that happen, I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. Like, who cares? It's for $1 million. But then you don't understand it until you're in the moment living it. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is so much more than a game.
So are you the Nicole Franzel of Survivor Maryland? Is that what you're
Well, I'm still friends with everyone. So considering your season happened 2016, it's 2020. That's 8 more seasons Survivor. I don't know how much of Big Brother. Has that changed your viewing of the show?
Yeah, definitely. So now I'm like a lot more, again, before I was just like, oh, that's stupid. Like they were friends. Ew, gross. But now I'm so much more empathetic when I get to see like the relationships that they are forming. Even if on Survivor, it's like they've been together for 20 days and it's like crazy, like the conflict that they have voting someone out that they've worked with for so long. It's like, I'm like, I get that. I can see where they're coming from.
Right. And I think honestly, when you have $1 million on the line, it's a better excuse than what you guys have, which is just like $100 and a sort of victory that, people on YouTube will respect. And
you can memorialize in a wiki too.
Yeah, and a wiki. Like it's a lot harder to validate hurting your friend's feelings over something like this.
Agreed. And with ours, like it lasts so much longer. And yeah, we intertwine our real lives. Like there's so much more. It's like if your island is kind of isolated and for the money, it's like a little bit different. Whereas this, it's like intertwined in our daily life. Like it's in our everyday schedule now, kind of thing.
Yeah. It reminds me of like when people want to give people the money for like, if their family needs it or whatever, like people are always looking for like the best reason to give somebody the win in Survivor. And sometimes it does come down to like, oh, well, you have a family that you're going to support, so I'll vote for you. Or like, and this is just like, you have no excuses. You just want to win Survivor. You're all like 22 and going to get drunk. Like there's no, there's no like moral victory here. It's all the same. Maybe it's almost 20. I don't know. But it's this. There's no like, I want to win $1 million to change my family's life.
Yeah, exactly. And even I used to always question that too. And they're like, oh, I want to vote this like mom out because she has kids. So like she would never vote for her. She needs the money. I'm like, but it's the game. Like you should base off game decisions. But now I can also see like kind of where that comes in.
Yeah. You said you stopped watching after the Josh vote at the final 9. One of the things we see at kind of the end game is Tim talk a lot about the game for him, and he's like, I came in saying like, I'll do whatever it takes to win. I will vote out friends. He has this very, very different tack from you, where he seems very much more willing to let you go, and maybe it's just like I was a resident assistant, so we'd always do these roommate contracts with roommates to kind of say, let's make sure you're all on the same page here with what you're getting into, what your expectations are. Just because, like, one of my favorite one is like, how clean are you from 1 to 10? And when you get like a 9 paired up with a 3, you're like, okay, we need to like talk about this now, because this is going to cause way more issues later if we do not talk about some hygiene issues that you're all going to have. So
right.
Yeah, but these guys are also all men in college. Like, hygiene issues are guaranteed. I'm sorry.
Right.
Like, I saw frat houses. It's.
I mean, I find it poor. I had a roommate who like was like, I just felt the need to clean all the grout and the kitchen tiles today on the floor. I'm like, great, you're the best roommate ever. And like,
love that.
You need to know what you're getting into with these things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think overall, like, when you reach the final 3 after this whole fight kind of happens and Delaram, sticks up for herself and all that, how were you feeling emotionally? Like, did it feel like victory, or were you like, oh, Jesus Christ, I just like
you look awful in the final countdown. So you look I'll just say you look very beat down.
Yeah, there was a point I thought I was gonna pass out. Like, it just, from everything, like, it was just so much. I was like, I looked at Tim, I was like, I just like started shaking my head now. Like, I was like, I couldn't even. Yeah, we had just been through so much at that point already that I was just like, the win. I wouldn't have felt good about the win, if that makes sense. Like, I wouldn't have felt like I deserved it because of everyone telling me otherwise. / not feeling like good within myself, because I do think the other 2 played deserving games.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like what really hurt your game was the Sadie text.
Yes.
I mean, that we kind of mentioned to it as a bit of a theme of the season. Sadie enjoyed texting people things on accident or on purpose she shouldn't have.
Agreed.
Is there anything like to add to what the season already talked about and everything on that?
I think we hit a lot of that on the other recap, but I would just, I do think that people were just like, what are you doing? I was spiraling. There was a lot of bad things that were happening at that point, but that really hurt. I think that's like why, like, if Amanda and Dane didn't flip to me, basically, after the tie. I think Josh, Angie, and Morgan could have voted for Santi regardless, and I think Amanda and Dane honestly could have voted for Tim regardless. But that's like kind of what confirmed them to split to Santi instead of me at the end.
So you come out of the season, you go into winter break. I've lost in the final travel council for a 7-day game. Like, I can't imagine playing an 80-day game and putting that much time into it. There had to be a lot you were wrestling with post game. How did you kind of deal with that in the recovery, especially because you go straight into another season?
Yeah, so I get the text like the day. It's like 2 days after our season's ending. Like, we're still like, me and Santi and Tim are still like making like, okay, we're okay, like whatever. Like, that was terrible for all 3 of us. Like, no one of us want to relive that. Even though Santi won, it still was like, he wouldn't want to relive it, I bet. And so I'm just like, I was actually studying abroad in Australia this winter. So I'm like piecing out like halfway across the earth for 3 weeks. So that helped definitely, because I could just complete not thinking about this at all. Overall, though, it definitely, like, I had a lot of internal just like resolution of like, oh, this is where I messed up. This is what I should have done. This is what I shouldn't have done. I had to really come to terms with that, what I did myself, and also to come to terms with like my friends and everything. So it definitely wasn't an easy decision to play again also, because at this point, but I also knew that I wanted to redeem myself for myself because of all these things that I did wrong and wanted to do better.
Right.
I wanted, 1, a chance to win again, obviously, but 2, it was like, I want to prove that, because people were saying like, you just had your friends to rely on. You just like, you were playing emotionally. I wanted to go into the next season and just be like, no emotions, like no friends. I'm to prove that like I'm still good at this game. Don't discredit everything I did the whole season just because I got emotional at the end.
Right. And I think also you're kind of, to proving that point, I don't know if you knew, I assume you didn't know who else was going to be there, but like, you're walking into the lion's den of people who don't want to work with you. And so, I was watching this and I was like, oh my God, like Doug's coming back. And I was like, oh fuck, Morgan's coming. Oh no, Eric. It's a bad season for Doug.
Yeah, you have Morgan, who you voted out. You have Mike, who you voted out. You have Eric, who you voted out. Katie on had what was on.
I didn't vote Eric out, actually. I just
That's true. You would have if you could have.
yeah, oh, happily, yeah.
You have Katie on who was on staff or helped him watch your season, so she knows exactly how you play.
Yeah.
And then I guess I don't remember the starting tribes, and you have Sherry who
Powerhouse Sherry. Yeah.
Powerhouse Sherry, right? You've seen her play at least.
Right. No, yeah. It's the walk, like I can't wait till that comes out and to see myself again and just like see my reactions, because they definitely, again, I'm gonna start off with a very villainous kind of take, because everyone's gonna definitely super happy to see like Morgan and Eric, especially like their redemption, and like Katie, and I'm probably the one that's just like, why'd they bring these people back?
Well, it's an interesting story, right? Like, at least, they brought like someone like Chris LeCompte back when I think Chris LeCompte was somebody who was so in control and so Survivor. I guess like he's a huge fan, just like you, and so and Chris LeCompte had an interesting story. Let's hope you don't do as sort of wildly as Chris LeCompte did in All Stars, but it is like I think a similar vein of like it is still interesting to bring back somebody who had control and had a good game and had a lot going for them. And then maybe if it is that some people are rooting for you to fail.
Oh, I'm sure most people are, but
well, the CBS Survivor show, most players when they return have seen themselves play and have seen the edit, how they appeared and their mistakes, and they've had like 6 months to a year minimum to reminisce on that. You're coming in 3 to 4 weeks. Like, so what were your big takeaways about your game of what you did right and what you did wrong?
So I was very proud of my like control, and very like as soon as you start to lose control, I like make one move or you don't feel in control, like that's when your whole game is getting out of control, because you have to make sure to do things for yourself, and if you just start doing things for other people, it's hard to kind of get back out of that. So that's something that I really was proud of in my game, that I was very in control a lot. The emotional aspect, I went in being like, this is a game, you're coming in as the quote unquote emotionally manipulative villain, bad friend with 3 idols who cried and lost in Final Tribe. Like I knew that was what everyone was going to share about me, knew about me going in, because they didn't get to see it. And I'm like, so I went in kind of like an underdog, like you are coming in with the hottest reputation that no one truly got to witness. So you have to, and with people that are going to slander your name, because these are like my enemies kind of walking in. So I went in like you have to show everyone why you are good at this game.
Mm-hmm. And I think, honestly, being a Survivor fan, we saw how much it helped you. And I think that, like, you have someone like, I don't want to say like Jacob Derwin-esque, but you have people who like know the game and sort of fail anyways because they can't understand how to apply their knowledge to what they're doing. But I think that's one of your strong suits, is applying what you know from Survivor. Did you have anybody that you were from Survivor that you were modeling your gameplay on, or somebody that you were trying to emulate when you were playing?
I don't think so, because I was trying to be adaptable and I knew I was going to be like cutthroat if I needed to, which I was to most people. So I was just like, I kind of just wanted to be myself and then go from there. I just wanted to make sure to be someone that was always in power.
It's funny because your snark like reminded me of Tyson a lot, but I think the losing at Final 3 is such a thing where I think people want to use that to define you, and I don't know if that necessarily is the case, but we'll have to come up with an accurate. I guess would it be Dominic, Steven? Are we?
Yeah,
we
talked a lot about Ghost Island. It was Ghost Island, and then Sadie. Then we're like, oh, it's not Ghost Island, like because we're seeing Sadie get taken out, and then we're like, oh no, it is Ghost Island. We just talked about it.
Santi just replaces her.
Is looking back, because when we talked about like when you said like, hey, looking back at the pre-merge, anything you do differently, you're like, no, I'm pretty happy. Looking back at the merge, was the Final Four always going to be a death trap for you, or was there anything you could have done, any combination of players you could have sat with the Final Four that could have resulted in something different?
I really don't think there was any. I would have had to win the Final Four challenge. Is kind of what starting at Final 9, I looked into it and I was like, there's no way, especially because Tim, Sadie, and Santi were all kind of going for each other at this point. I was just, there's no possible way I can make it to the Final Four and not be the person that everyone wants to go home. Is like after Final 9, I realized.
Right.
It's like, do you like build up Angie as this huge contender no one can be and try to get her taken as the like say, hey, she's the last person from the Shikasha tribe. We have to vote her out. Doesn't matter if you don't think you can beat me. I'm losing to her too. Like,
right. Yeah. No, they all still, her and like Dane and like even her and Santi has such a relationship. Like they're still the underdog in this sense.
Yeah.
I think an interesting comparison to also make is possibly, I don't know how Big Brother fan you are, but like Dan Giesling in 14 of like, you do all these crazy, crazy things that upset people to get to the end, and then you lose, and it happens. And I think losing is not the end of the world. I think,
right. I think
like,
it was
kind of
worked
all
out.
the, yeah, exactly. Like everyone's gonna lose except one person. Like it's not a huge deal, and you know it sucks, but it's also like that's the game we signed up for, right? But I think Dan Giesling is something that comes to mind a little bit of just like you try and sort of make all these sort of crazy zigzag moves, and then in the end it really is like it's hard to win. Just because you get there doesn't mean it's guaranteed.
Right. And I think I had such a kind of dominant thing and people were so frustrated not wanting to vote. Like they just did. Also, people just straight up didn't want me to win because I made it there. Also, like it didn't help. There's a lot of things that, and like Santi's just played a great game and is super likable. Tim's also great and super likable. So it's just like, there was a lot of factors that kind of went into that.
I think it was the only way you could have gone the final three that would result you not winning. I think any other way you get to the final three, you just win.
It's fair. I also think though, I like to some people like Morgan and like Angie, like some people didn't even like respect or like got to see what I was doing as much because I think I played it so low key for some of it that like people didn't even realize I was leading some of the charge in the edit, that they genuinely didn't really get it.
And then Tim was even more low key. So it's just.
Have you heard from the other players as your season aired or concluded about what things that surprised them about your game, or did this give you an opportunity to reconnect with anyone?
Yeah, we definitely. I texted a lot of the people. There's still more people that I haven't reached out to that I want to. But yeah, a lot of people would be like, "Oh, like that was a funny comment," you know, or something like that, or like, "Wow, like you really had a lot of screen time with like everyone." Or like you did a good job of that. So it definitely was cool being able to text a lot of the castmates and just kind of good to see everyone. And like, again, I still feel close to them because we spent the whole semester together. It's like, I could text half the cast and just be like something and they'd be like, respond as if it was normal just because we do have a really good relationship. So
I had to imagine going in this season, and you know the outcome. Were you just dreading this actually coming out, or you just feel relieved right now that it's over?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was terrible. It was one of those things. It was like I didn't. That's why, like, again, it took me so long to really get. Like Santi, I know was like live chatting at the episodes and like super involved at the time. Like I didn't watch it till my winter break of school because I thought I didn't want people to like start like messaging me, or like I just like knew that people, especially towards the end, were just not gonna like me that much. Yeah. So I kind of like I wanted to wait until I was kind of like ready for it. But yeah, letting it out. I wasn't thrilled that it was going to come out, but I loved the way Anders edited like the season and stuff. I thought he did a great job. I was very impressed by everything.
Yeah. And Steven, is it time to ask the big Q that we always ask, or do you have other thoughts?
Go for it.
Doug, would you play a live reality game again? Would you play? We know you're playing
next season Survivor Maryland.
Yeah, I was like, I am.
We know you're playing Maryland again, but would you ever consider doing something that is just in the live reality game universe of other Survivor games that are not college affiliated? I assume.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did like an org at one point. Like I've done.
We heard Santi gets you voted out in the org.
I've done, yeah. Well, I did one like not Survivor Maryland one. Then I did a Survivor Maryland. So like I've done other things. There's like I've seen like, again, the school it's harder to do, but yeah, I would love to. Like I mean, even though it ended terrible, I now can like handle myself, especially when it's people I don't know starting the game. It's like you can't hurt me. I've been through it already, so. I would love to, and I think that it's something that I have just such like a passion for is the game, and being like playing it is so fun to me.
Yeah, I think like College Survivor is like is like such a boot camp for like day-long Survivor games and sort of 2 day long, because you learn so many techniques of like how to get people to like you, and then it just like you can focus it in like 2 days.
Oh yeah, and like I grew so much in life, just like my strengths and weaknesses and like all these other kinds of things, and like my friendships. Like there was so many aspects of my life that I was like, wow, I was very like immature in this area. that I was able to grow, and like I can credit that to Survivor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. That's why we are, I think, are fans of Survivor, right? Is because we love the way it sort of transforms people's lives, even in the fan ripoff "Don't Sue Us" CBS version.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I can still look back, even though it ended so darkly. Like I still look back on it as such a good experience. Like it's like even though that obviously was a hard point in it, it's not something that I know a lot of the fans that will cloud everything. But for me, I don't let that take away from like the great relationships that I did make, the fun I had, the challenges, just every part of it. I like loved playing.
Do you have a favorite moment from the season?
Well, that's a good question. I think my like proudest moment definitely was the Liam blindside, just because I put so much work into doing it, and it ended up working out so well for me that like to me that was my proudest moment, and I think that might be my favorite also looking back. But there was a lot of just so many funny like good things that making Tim fall over in sumo was a great time.
What advice would you give to future Maryland players?
The advice, just put it all in, like go hard for it, find the idols, like talk to everyone, make relationships, and just have fun. Like it's one of those things that it's so unique, and it's something like I talked about it on my med school interviews, and it's like, how does that relate? Again, like still looking back, it's one of those things you don't know, but it kind of makes you stand out because you're like, I was able to do all this stuff, but also have like do school during it, which is like, again, people forget, all the fans forget. It's like we're like literally doing classes, taking exams the next day. So it's one of those things that it's like, you're going to look back and be like, wow, that was like such a once in a lifetime kind of thing that I'll like got to do.
Yeah.
Something Santi mentioned is that he didn't give you any advice or tips going into your next season.
Right.
Did you feel like you feel like you wish you talked to a winner going into things? Like, what did you do that I should have done? Or
no. With our relationship at that point, and just like, yeah, he mentioned this, it's like we're super competitive with each other. All the time, that I couldn't inflate his ego by being like, wow, you winner, what's your advice for me? Like, no, absolutely not.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Is there anything else, Stephen, that we should talk about before we wrap up? I think you technically beat Santi.
You beat Santi.
Yeah, you did.
Quality and quantity, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Got both.
Wow. I wasn't going to say that, but all right, Stephen, go in.
I know he's gonna watch this and be so mad.
So bad. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you and to talk to Santi, but really this, I think, is something that a lot of fans should listen to. I mean, it's the end, so hopefully they did listen. But right. Doug, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. We had a blast watching this season, even if sometimes we don't watch any old podcasts, I think. Just that's my advice to you.
That's what I've been doing, gotten told to do, and that's fine. I'm like, everyone can have their opinion, that's fine. As long as you can judge a lot of things that I did or decisions I made, just not me as a person or like my overall game playing, and then I'm fine with that. I'm like, I judge myself for things I did too. Don't you worry.
You can hear us in like episode 2, episode 3. Mimi's like, is Doug the villain of the season? Like and us debating who the villain is gonna be. Yeah,
at the very least, don't watch the Sadie vote out episode because I think I go in.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry. It's okay. At least Josh had messaged me and he was like, you said I was nothing, but that's okay.
Josh has been such a good sport too. Tim has really been a good sport too. Like everyone that has been on the poor receiving end of comments has been very good about it. So yeah, we get it.
They don't deserve it. Well, folks, that's the end of the live reality games Maryland coverage, unless Dane or Tim want to hit us up, which I don't think they do. But if they do, they're welcome to. We will be back for season 8, where Doug, you'll be there. So if you get voted out again, we'll hit you up.
I was gonna say, let me know if you get the chance to, whenever that may be in the season.
Yes.
2 years from now.
Who knows?
Yeah, 10 years from now, I can't wait. We're honestly we'll have like 5 other presidents by the time that that season comes out. Well, it's been a blast to talk to you, Doug. Stephen, I'm sure you feel the same. Yeah, and we enjoyed this season immensely. So we hope that you play again, because I think that you have one of the best applications of skills to the game, and it's been really fun
we're scared for next season. We know you're just gonna be you're gonna have an uphill battle all the way to the end, but if you make it, it'll be great.
Right? Yeah, you'll see how that works out.
Oh boy, I can't wait. Well, I'm gonna go watch the Bills maybe win. Who knows? Let's all pray for me. All right. Thank you for watching. Make sure to follow Live Reality Games on Facebook, all that good jazz. We're on Twitter now. I retweeted. I don't know. Look it up. All right, guys, let's wrap this up. I'm hitting end. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and
Thank you.